So how can the city evolve in this new era of safe distancing, and particularly in a dense city like Singapore? I think first is to start thinking about respacing our city at different scales. So what do I mean? I think conceptually we have to think about how to create bubbles at different scales where we can contain and insulate as and when necessary. And it's also the idea of de-densifying and reducing crowdedness. So for example, at the country level, we already talked about travel bubbles, where countries put themselves in a bubble, but they link up to another bubble, which has less infection or the same rate of infection, and then they deal at the interface, right? Whether you have these special passports or you have to test people before they come in. At a regional level, if you imagine Singapore to be divided into regions, you actually want more self-sufficient regions where you have jobs and amenities closer to homes. So this minimizes travel on public transport. It helps to thin out densities in the city and in commercial hubs. In fact, we've already been doing our decentralization efforts in developing polycentric centers to serve different regions. But we have to rethink, how large should this be? What is the pace of these polycentric centers that we want to build? And do we still need so much office space? So these are lots of questions. Now, then we go down to the neighborhood level. There'll be more localization we can think about, because you want to achieve self-sufficiency at a much more local level. You have shops, daily amenities, parks that are nearby at your doorstep. You can reach them easily, particularly for the elderly. And you don't have to travel, you don't have to take public transport. And fortunately, in the HDB towns, many of our towns are already organized as neighborhoods served by neighborhood centers. So that's the good news. We are pretty much actually on the way in doing some of these things. Next level is the building level, right? If we talk about working spaces, I think people will still need to go to the office because there is the issue of creative collaboration and creativity. And that is important when people get together, although we are mindful that there'll be a lot of remote working as well. So it means that the office space will start to have to be right sized and redesigned. Maybe you get more co-working spaces and conference facilities that people share instead of having your own office. And I think health, wellness, hygiene becomes very, very critical. And we, of course, have to de-densify the office, sit further apart workstations, we have screens. The other thing is to start thinking about your building design. Air conditioning. We have a lot of air conditioning. So you need to think about the type of filters you use. Do you have disinfectants using UV light? And you want it to be very contactless, right? Whether it's taps, lift buttons, door handles, they soon have to be sensor triggered rather than us touching and then worrying about it. And the use of antimicrobial coatings on surfaces. Living spaces, all of us are working at home right now. So we have to think about the redesign of the living space. How do we get more privacy into the homes? Because you have your kids, the husband and the wife, they're all working and we're all talking together. So that has to be thought about in terms of design. And also communal type accommodation. And it's not just about workers' dorms, it's also about nursing homes, school hostels, where a lot of people are gathered living together, particularly in the same room. It's a problem. It has to be spread out. You have to segregate. So the building design has to be thought about. I don't have time to go into that, but there's been a lot of suggestions on this. I just want to touch also on urban transport and logistics.
Yes.
You need to minimize crowdedness, right? And telecommuting helps people to minimize crowdedness. Maybe with digital technology, you can do real-time seat management on buses and trains. And maybe more people will go back to using personal mobility devices. And we want to encourage more people to walk and to cycle. If you have less cars on the road, maybe we can take back some road spaces and widen our pavements and cycling tracks. Now, this other idea about moving from brick to click for online shopping, it means you need to move goods in a much more efficient way and to collect them also in a more efficient way. So I think they will accelerate this idea of the parcel collection points. We already have pop-up boxes, but I think a lot of these will accelerate. And how about delivery by drones? If that picks up, I think further into the future, you have to think about how the drones can park, pick up parcels, take off, land. So maybe instead of car parks, you also have drone parks at the same time. So these are pretty futuristic ideas, which I talk about is more long term, right? Not so much in the immediate term.
Yes.
Innovation and technology will play a very, very important role, right? We have big data analysis and geospatial tools. They help in trend analysis and contact tracing. There's robotics and automation solutions for safe distancing enforcement, service delivery. Uh, you have drones, which I talked about for deliveries, maybe more autonomous vehicles in time to come because you don't have drivers.